Hello, BookTube. It's Friday. That means Friday reads, and I wanted to show you some books that I'll be reading. I've already started. I started at dawn this morning, and going all the way until dawn on Monday morning. So I've got a few of them here. I don't think this is everything, but it's a good mix. So the first one is a June book. It's Frenemies by Ken Auletta. This is about it's his study of the way that the internet and social media and big data have altered the profession of advertising, which you wouldn't think would interest me at all, but he does. Of course, he's a writer that I really like. Not necessarily for his prose style, but for the way that he really digs in, and always has a fascinating story to tell. His book, Googled, is just terrifically entertaining, every bit as much now as it was when it came out. So that will definitely be on there. And then there's this thing that's a little odd, but I'm going to be reviewing this. This is by Alyssa Quart, and it is Squeezed: Why Our Families Can't Afford America. This is about all of the financial pressures that are steadily increasing on Americans, just from all sides. Although I think this book largely concentrates on college, on the fact that Americans can't send their kids to college anymore. It's not an assumption anymore that they will do that. Instead, it's a huge thing. And I don't know that for sure. We'll see what asks. I don't know anything about this author. I don't know anything about this subject. I'll be reviewing this. But it's one of those cases where, in addition to reviewing it, I'll also be learning a lot about it, which is tons of fun. I actually love doing that. And then this next one is also a June book. It's another thing I'll be reviewing. Greatly looking forward to it. This is Reporter. This is a memoir by Seymour Hersh, the historian and reporter Seymour Hersh, about whom I know quite a bit. So we shall see what his memoir is like. And then I want to show you a couple of debut works of fiction. Those of you who watch this channel for any length of time know that I love debut works of fiction. I love just the breadth of possibilities. You never know. It's not the second book or the third book where you're seeing something and thinking, yeah, so that's your thing, is it? Oh, that phrasing, or oh, okay, the black female character is a harridan. Oh, and this is like the third one that you've done. So it's not that you needed her to be one in the first book or even the second book. It's that you think of them that way. Or yeah, in your first book you had a cataclysmic plane crash that moved the plot along. And in the second book it was a cataclysmic truck crash on a highway that moved the plot along. And so you start the third book thinking, okay, that was 2 times in a row. Now my natural question is, do you need that in order to move the plot along? Do you not know how to move the plot along on your own without an act of God? When that's an actual pointed question. Because if you don't know how to move the plot along without introducing a massive coincidence, a massive outside tragedy, then you aren't very good at writing fiction. And there are a whole bunch of people out there who aren't really good at writing fiction, but no one's asking me to pay $35 to read their work. No one's putting their work out there to be reviewed all over the place. So if your third book or your second book starts to reveal that you have only an average person's abilities in the field that you've chosen to work in, that's important. And you learn all those things, but you don't learn them right away. If someone is just flat out bad at writing, then in their debut you will know. You will see it right away. They will use tired cliches, and since there are no editors anymore, no one will catch them. There will be giant plot holes, and since there aren't editors anymore, no one will catch them. And you can't blame the editors. If you're at a middling publishing house, then your budget has been slashed, your personnel has been stripped. You have almost nothing. So I can't quite blame you anymore, even though there are some mind frames that would say I should, since it's your job. But I can certainly blame the author. I certainly can. No author writes in solitude anymore. God help us. Everybody in the cafe, everybody in the local writing group, a whole bunch of friends and girlfriends and ex-girlfriends. You have not written in a vacuum. And you have been chin-strokingly, latte-slurpingly narcissistic your whole life. So you have studied every word that you've ever written. If after all that, it still stinks on your first try, well, that'll be obvious, but I love them anyway, because when they don't stink, then there's a thrill. Just thinking, oh my God, how long are you going to be able to keep this beach ball up in the air before you stumble? So the first one I want to show you is a collection of interconnected short stories, a gimmick that I don't particularly like, but sometimes I've seen it done well. This is by Maxine Loskutov, and it is Come West and See. That is a bear with a cub in its mouth. And a cub at its teat as well. And this is... There is our author out in the wilds. And this is what I believe it falls under the heading of what I sometimes refer to on this channel as Hicklit. Let me read you a little bit of it here. In an isolated region of Idaho, Montana, and eastern Oregon known as the Redoubt, an armed occupation of a wildlife refuge is escalating into civil war. Against this backdrop, 12 stories of ordinary lives explore the loneliness, fragility, and heartbreak inherent in love. Families feel the far-reaching shockwaves of displacement and division. Meth. A mother makes a hard choice for her sons when their father goes to lead a standoff with the federal government. An unemployed carpenter joins a militia after his wife leaves him, surrendering to self-pity as the first airstrike razes the streets of his hometown. Okay, so Come West and See by Maxine Loskutov. And then the next one is also a debut, but it's just a debut novel. It is by an absolutely seasoned author of movie screenplays and television screenplays. So whereas with Come West and See, I imagine that I will see a lot of debut short stories, interconnected short story authors. They tend to pull out the stops in terms of linguistic creativity. They have whittled their imagery to be as beautiful as they know how to make it. And their dialogue is often just pinprick sharp. But because they're new, there can sometimes be structural problems, pacing problems, even plot problems. And with debut fiction, I just expect to see those sorts of things. And with debut fiction, I'm fairly indulgent of them unless they're of the oh, come on variety. So enormous that it's not just the charm of your ardor that made you miss them. It's that you're just not paying attention to what you're doing. But with this one, this is The Season Airs by Jonna King. And she has written for TV and movies. She has written an enormous amount. This is just her first novel. This is her debut novel. And I'm not going to see anything like that here with her. I already know that. This is someone who does not make mistakes like that anymore. Structural, plotting mistakes like that anymore. Pacing mistakes. Even atmosphere mistakes. Just doesn't do it. So the thing to be worried about here, considering that she's been writing for movies and TV forever, the thing to worry about here is not structural problems, but the lack of depth. Because the venues that she's done all of her writing for in her life are venues where depth is the enemy. So we shall see. We shall see. But I want to read you this too, because the plot here is really good. An idyllic Nantucket summer begins like a dream for scrappy Mia from South Boston. Presley, a gorgeous Southern beauty queen. Cole, a handsome introvert. Jade, the sultry daughter of a model and music mogul. JP, an energetic young designer. And Grant, a playful party boy. These 6 are working as season heirs, influential brand ambassadors. If you don't know what that is, I know a couple of people who are brand ambassadors. It's a fairly hollow life, but no expense is spared. They live like kings. The season heirs is actually kind of true. They stay in the best hotels. They fly in the best, at the drop of a hat anywhere in the world. They never pay for their own clothing. But they're on the beck and call, and they have to be at these events. It's like being a living commercial on TV. But anyway, let's see here. Influential brand ambassadors for the clothing line Linden Wild. But like all things that look too good to be true, the darkness lurking underneath slowly rises to the surface. And absolutely love Nantucket. So that drew me in right away. But in addition to that, I'm just curious to see how it all goes. So those are the fiction debuts. And then there's a book that's not a fiction debut. It's the third in the series, but I have loved the series. And it's this. It's Sylvain Neuvel. It's Only Human. This is the next. This is the author is the author of Sleeping Giants, which has the most amazingly inviting opening premise. Any modern book, or a young girl is bicycling along, falls in a hole, and lands in a hand a giant metal hand. A giant metal hand has been buried underground, and when it's excavated, it turns out to be part of a giant metal robot. And these things are lovely. Look at this. Isn't that great? And the first book was, I thought, terrific. The second book, I in some ways liked it more because it seemed to have a lot more depth to it, a lot better characters to it. But it seemed also at the end of the second book that the whole plot went off the rails. And so I'm really curious to know what the third one will be like. I never got an advance copy of this, so this will be my first crack at it. And then a bit of nonfiction that I read the advance copy. I'm going to read it again now that I have the finished copy, but I know enough already. I'll be picking up things, I'll be taking details because I want to write about it, but I know enough already to wholeheartedly recommend it to you. And it's this, The Last Cowboys by John Branch. I think I've recommended on this channel before. I'm so looking forward to the reread of this, but it's about a family from a cattle ranch out west that is struggling with drought and with changing market environments. And the main character is the patriarch of the family, but the younger members of the family are trying to get into rodeo-style spectator sports as a way to help the family survive. And the combination of that, the multi-generational nature of this family trying to live, trying to adapt to the modern world, and the personalities involved make this just so good. I mean, I'm looking forward to rereading it, but I can already recommend it. It is just amazingly good. And then the last one, Tudor fiction. Fatal Throne with a blood tear. And this is a collection of short stories, each by a different author. One is a short story narrated by Henry VIII and Elizabeth I. But then all the others are narrated by each of Henry's wives. Each one with a different writer. Let me see if I can give you the roundup here. M.T. Anderson does the Henry VIII, Elizabeth I bit. Then Jennifer Donnelly does Anne of Cleves. Candace Fleming does Catherine of Aragon. Stephanie Hemphill does Anne Boleyn. Lisa Ann Sandell does Jane Seymour. Linda Sue Park does Catherine Howard. And Deborah Hopkinson does my beloved Catherine Parr. And it's a YA, but it seemed too lurid for me to pass up. And it's Tudor fiction. And I haven't had much of that in 2018. So there you have it. That is my a chunk of my Friday reads this time around. Keeping in mind, I almost never sleep, and I read really fast. And as usual, I would love to know what you're working on this weekend. That's one of the most fun things about Friday reads is that it's a perfect chance to nose into your business and ask you what you're reading this weekend. So feel free to let me know, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.